joining us this evening. It's lovely to see so many of you as well. I'm going to shortly hand over to Mrs. Posse and the PE team who will be leading this evening. I just wanted to say, again, thank you for joining us. As many of you know, and I've had these conversations with you, sport is very close to my heart as well, and I think I loved sport at school, but I was not lucky to have the kind of teachers that your daughters have, and they really are a fantastic team, and sport in the Girls' Prep is in very safe hands. But actually, for us as a whole school, we just want your daughters to love exercise and to leave us loving exercise. That is the most important part of it. Yes, the competition is great and all these new skills they get, but actually having a love of exercise for life is so important and will be important for their futures. So I think enough from me, and I will hand over to the PE team. But thank you very much for joining us, and I look forward to this evening.
Thank you. You've actually probably said it all there in a nutshell. But I'm going to tell you the what, why, and the how, so that you get a better understanding of who we are and what we intend to do, not just now, but for the next few years. So welcome to this evening. This is the setup for tonight, so talking about introducing you to the team, the philosophies, so this idea of function over fashion, the sportful ethos, so how we intend to meet that, I suppose, promise that we want to give pupils, the curriculum. We're going to touch on encouraging excellence because that is also what we do, as well as the participation side. And then the contentious issue of selection and how that works, as well as the debate on early specialisation. So from my experience, where I think early specialisation lies and whether you need to specialise early or not. So there's going to be differing opinions about that. So here's the team. So you've got myself as the head of sport. You've got Lucy Vincent, who is the assistant in sport. Katrina, who is in charge of pupil experience and sports ambassadors. Maddie, who is our PE GAP student, who started with us this September. We've got Amy Edwards, who's in charge of the athletics and the swimming programme, Year 1 swimming, so she's taking that on board this year. And then Amy McKenzie, who is our dance and gymnastics lead. And then Emily Reed, who is our netball lead. So as you can see, they've all got different strands because I can't do it myself. They are vitally important. This is what makes everything run in harmony most of the time, because we work together and they take on strands of the PE sport curriculum and co-curricular programme. So I just wanted to start with this function over fashion idea. We've all seen this iceberg before, the idea of what you see on the surface, there's just so much going on underneath it. So at the top you've got these words, and we refer to these as behaviours. And we are working towards these positive behaviours. We want to see these behaviours from our pupils, including upholding our values that we have here in school. And we underpin it with the school strategies, so the idea of communication, clear communication, how we do that, systems, as well as learning innovations. Actually, how do our pupils learn? How do we get the best out of them? And I'm going to touch on that a little bit later. And then this idea of well-being. We want them to be really happy here. When they're not, it does genuinely upset us as well. And sometimes there are hiccups in the road, there are bumps, but the well-being side is vitally important to us. It is the priority for us. And then the idea of facilities. So we work very hard with all 3 schools about how we manage the facilities with 3 busy schools and all the sport that goes on. How do we make sure that our pupils in this school get the same opportunities? So with PE and sport, how do we actually encourage and support the development of these positive behaviours? And we've started to create a motivational environment. Okay? I'm going to talk about how we do that as well. We've also got this idea of safe uncertainty. So it's one of my favourite sayings, comfort the troubled and trouble the comfortable. Some of you might have heard me say that before. And this applies to every pupil that we have here. And that's for us to know them well individually, to say when do we give them that nudge But then when do we put that arm around them and make them feel safe and secure so they then continue to make progress? But I will touch on that more. This idea of learning to win and lose. So the first encounter we have is through reception, straight the way up to Key Stage 2. So they play Rob the Nest, Mountains and Valleys, and all the way through these fun games there's key messages and managing emotions. And we start from day one. You know, you've got so many valleys, you've got not so many mountains. How do you feel about that? Do we applaud? Do we celebrate? Well, it's okay to celebrate, but if you're on the losing team, you might actually want to applaud them because they did a good job. Do we get upset about it? And what are we upset about? So those are the questions that we really go through. Even with reception, we start really, really early. And this idea of initial talent identification and intervention. So we do this through assessment, and we are reviewing our assessment procedures. We do it at the start of the topic and at the end of the topics that we have. So for instance, we're appropriately staffed in Key Stage 1 lessons to identify any gaps, and then we support the development, and then we start to bridge that gap subtly. So they don't feel like, actually, am I behind? But we do it through a lot of encouragement, we do it through a lot of small work. And then we also identify pupils that we can invite to morning sessions, the fundamental sessions that we have. So reception, year 1 and year 2 all get a term of fundamental invites or morning sessions. So for instance, at the moment it's year 2. They have it in the autumn term because we feel like at the beginning of school they're able to cope with it in the early mornings. And then in year 1, in year 1 we open it up in the spring term, and then we open up summer term to reception, because by that point they've got a little bit older, they've got most of the school year under their belt, and then we invite them to those fundamental sessions where we've identified where pupils might need a little bit more support or a little bit more time on those fundamental movement skills. And then we build in feedback and reflection. So the team work really hard to ensure our pupils receive developmental feedback. We don't call it criticism, it's not meant to be criticism, it's all about how can you be better than you already are, or what stage you're at, and how can we develop you further. And then we build that time in. And we give our pupils a time to reflect also. So this idea of what went well and why, what's even better if, what could we do better? And with the small ones I tend to use 3 stars and a wish. So 3 things that we're doing well, give them a star, anything you would wish for before you do better. Try and differentiate. So creating this motivational climate, we do this very subtly, but the first stage of creating this climate is knowing them, so the real basics. Do we know their names? Do we know their playing positions? Do we know whether they want to be pushed or to be supported? This was very much us last year. Being pretty much a brand new team, we were in this knowing stage last year. But we're now starting to understand, so it's the next level of knowing our pupils, so that idea of what are their constraints, what are their motivations, what makes them tick, when are their pinch points, especially as they get older, what do they need from us? Do they need emotional support? Do they need real developmental support? Do they need more, I suppose, physical support, how to be more resilient or gritty? And then the idea of the support comes in place with that, like I said, that arm around the shoulder, or giving them that push or that nudge. You know, do we push them in that direction and say, actually, it's all right, we're in the safe zone. Each student will be different though, and that's what we've got to remember the whole time. We also want to stretch them. So development only happens on the edge of the comfort zone. Those of you that might have read sporting books, etc., biographies, you've got to be on that cusp of the uncomfortable zone to really make progress. So we consider what the stretch point is for our pupils and our individuals. So we have this idea of safe uncertainty, but I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. So, and we like to invest, so we actually care about the pupils. We're interested in them as people, not just in the game session, in PE lessons, but we'd really like to hear about what they do at their weekends or after school, or if they've got a story to tell us, because it all builds a much bigger picture for us. And then we want the parent engagement, which we are in the early stages of. So we want to work with you as parents, and we want to keep the communication lines. So I'm going to show you a little magic moment here that happened, I think, last week, and it's linked to safe uncertainty. This is Connie. Connie, from the very start, really struggles with inversion. She doesn't like to roll. She won't roll along the floor. She won't want to go backwards. And that's the first time she's experienced it, so she's built up to that point. At that point, they've said they probably don't know whether she wants to laugh or cry because she's just done it. But that was a real magic moment, and last week, that was our talking point the whole time. It's what drives us, that motivates us when we see things like this happen in real time. And we did send it to the parents because they also know that's a struggle for her, and they were over the moon. And that only comes down to one thing that we do really, really subtly, and that's this idea of safe uncertainty. So it comes from hockey. I am a hockey specialist, so I'm not going to lie to you. A lot of the reading and things and the learning innovation I tend to pull from there. But we tend to want to be in this safe uncertainty zone. So the idea of providing creative tasks, allowing them to be creative. And then this idea of positive risk-taking, and doing that through exploratory activities, discovery, and just really saying to them, actually, we want you to think for yourselves as well. And something like that only happens when you're in that safe uncertainty zone. So, for example, the idea of problem solving. So, where I've had year 2 for hockey, I just give them a space and say, here's a ball, here's a stick, use the flat side, 2 hands apart. I just want you to carry the ball, I want you to dribble it. And I think I stood there for about 4 minutes and thought, I really need to stand back and not interject, because their safe zone was and they didn't move away from their base. They all had a base, but they probably moved 2 meters maximum, although they had all this space. So I had to step back a bit, and then I stopped and said, actually, you haven't got any restrictions here. You're in this bigger zone, don't go out of it, but you can go in any direction you want. And they started again. So they got a bit more brave, and off they went. Got a bit further away, and then I realised they just started going round in one big circle together. And it happens, you tell them to run and they run in this circle. And they do that in this hall. So it's the idea of saying to them, actually, can you be creative? Instead of running in a circle, which we're used to doing, can you go in a different direction? What directions can you go in? Also look up so you're not bumping into anybody. So they start to venture. And I think by week 2 or 3, they were off. But I think sometimes children are so constrained and there's limitations on them. Don't do that, no to this, no to that, stop doing that. You know, we as teachers do it, I'm sure as parents we do it. I do it with my nephew. And I have to check myself and say, actually, this is a safe zone. Let them go and explore, take a bit of positive risk, and let them be creative. So that actually, when they come to PE and sport, they've got this ability to problem solve. And they've got this ability to be brave and take risks, so the idea of risk and reward. And I use the word brave a lot with them. So are you brave? Have a go. I want you to be brave. What does it mean to be brave? so that we then start to develop this area of safe uncertainty. And that is the area where they're going to make most progress. So I'm just going to pass you on to Mrs. Vincent, who's going to touch on talent ID and scholarships.
Hi everyone. So some of you here, this will be really, really relevant because you've got children higher up in the school, and for others in reception and Key Stage 1, you might be thinking, why do we need to know about this? But I think it's really important you see it as a whole school and a through school approach of what we do from the beginning to where we go towards the end. So the first time we really, as teachers, speak to you properly about scholarships is Year 4. So we do an introduction talk of how the scholarships work, what type of scholarships are on offer over at the senior school and wider, and what the expectation is of them scholarship applications. Because in Year 4, that would be the time where we're looking at they need to start specialising, not in just one sport, but they need to be playing, if they're thinking about a scholarship externally, they need to be having hours outside of the curriculum time. So that's why we sort of give them a sort of brief in Year 4. Year 5, we then have another evening where we invite you guys in, and we will have the senior school heads of sport and the director of sport, and they will have a little 5 to 10 minute session with you just to give you a little bit of a more in-depth overview. So what they're looking for, what the expectation of your daughter would be if they were going through to them, the cohort, what it's about in our local area, as it is very competitive, so just talking you through in a little bit more detail. In between that Year 4 and 5 talk, we as staff would have approached you if we think your daughter has potential or is showing potential, or we think that there is a pathway that needs to be set for her. Likewise, if you are thinking about it and she does something maybe externally that we don't know about, and we can tap into that, and it also can follow a sports pathway for a scholarship, we then need to work with you on the other way, just so we can support you and clock in an hours at external clubs and with coaches. We then start to integrate it really in the 5 to 6 curriculum, where there'll be additional slots where we work with the girls. So there's early morning invite sessions, so that will be selected for our top cusp of groups. So that will be our 18 players, the girls that we really, really now need to challenge, push. They're doing really well in the curriculum, they're starting to maybe plateau a bit, and they need something additional. We would then start to have individual conversations with you and your daughter. So either you can approach us, or we will most definitely approach you to have just a 5 to 10 minute meeting to say, how are we getting on? Is she playing externally? How can we support? There's some girls that are playing 16 to 20 hours outside of school, and then that will be where we say, actually, we need to rein it in a little bit. It's too much with school, and I think sometimes coming from a parent head, you can become quite consumed a gymnastics club or another club. She's going to make it, she's going to be big. And actually, we need to have a bit of a bigger, broader outlook on they are only 7, 8, 9 and 10, and we need to manage them expectations. Then we will, of course, support through the whole process. So with one-to-one contact with you guys, supporting with clubs, speaking to coaches at clubs, and supporting you to create that reference. So it is comprised of a portfolio, so it's a video of your daughter in that specialised sport, references from external coaches, references from staff with inside school, and most recently we've just introduced a mentoring programme for the Year 6s. So it's also about looking after the girls' well-being, and I think sometimes it can be a real parent-forced scholarship application, other times it can be a pupil force, or other times it can be, actually we're just going to go for it and see how we get on. And it's also about managing that, why are we going for the scholarship, who actually wants the scholarship, have we thought about the through process of what the expectation of them is going to be in a senior school with the title of a scholarship. And so that's us having, so at the minute they're taken out of their on-site curriculum lesson and they go with one of the team, and it might be just a conversation, how do you feel? The deadline for this year's Year 6 is Wednesday, so it's fast approaching. They're nervous. Some of them think, yeah, I've got it in the bag. Someone asked them the other day, what are you expecting to get out of the process? a scholarship, they said, and we're like, that's not quite guaranteed, but we can work with that. So it's about managing them expectations. Also, just to highlight, we have moved our training night to facilitate them girls that are really, really pushing and working exceptionally hard and at elite level. They will train with us in the evening and they will fold into Year 7 training. So they will go straight in to the Year 7 training with the seniors on the same night, so they will continue to train until 6 o'clock. That gives them more hours on the court, more hours on the gym floor, which hopefully alleviates, it doesn't take away their training outside of school, but it tries to manage mum's taxis, dad's taxis, and try and just give them a bit more support in school. It also gives them exposure to senior school. So the senior school staff are seeing them, they know who they are, they know where they're coming from, and they know what they've got to work with. So that's just a little bit of an overview of where we're coming from with scholarships at the minute. And we just wanted to show you a little picture of, this is currently the 18 netball squad at the senior school. 3 of the girls went for a scholarship. Only 1 girl got a netball scholarship, but they are all having the exact same training, exposure, competition, experience. So just by not getting the scholarship is not the be-all or end-all. They will get exactly the same pathway. So it's just about feeding that through to the parents and the girls that, okay, it's a great experience, go through the process, but actually it doesn't mean that you're going to be blocked or you won't have the same experience moving forward. So that's just a bit of an overview of our last year's cohort that have just currently gone over. Back to you.
Okay, so we're now on what are we actually doing to create this motivational climate that we're talking about, and how we're encouraging those positive behaviours. You may have noticed we've got the pre-season sessions and we open them to all. So from Year 3 onwards, we have hockey sessions at the start of September because we're in hockey half-term or hockey term. And then in January it will be open to, you get an open invite to the netball sessions for Year 3, 4, 5 and 6. And in the summer term, actually last academic year we did cricket also, so Year 3 upwards we put the invites out for cricket. So we really are trying to just give them a bit of a head start. You can be a little bit rusty when you first start at the beginning of the term, so it's nice for them to get together, especially after a break, and just enjoy themselves, meet up together. They like to have a natter, they can get that out of their system, but also whilst being physically active and having that movement and just having fun. That's the main thing. So they get touch, they enjoy it, and also as parents you probably get a little bit of respite after you've had 8 weeks with them and think, actually you can maybe send them off to Inchley Wood and they can have some activity outside with us before they return to school. We've got our house competitions that are happening at the moment, and we're trying to do cricket. We do want to do athletics. We're still working out how we're going to do that because that would be quite nice. But we've got our football, our hockey and our netball. And we're also entering Key Stage 1 festivals. So I don't know if you're aware, but we have a local borough network of primary schools, and they have someone who coordinates the sports competitions borough-wide. So we have now started to enter Key Stage 1 festivals where we can, that don't clash with significant events on the calendar. So that we try and give them the opportunity to attend these and actually be they're more exposed to a variety of different sports, even circus skills, but the idea is that love for physical literacy, the idea of movement and being responsible for their own movement and then being more aware of it too. Games afternoon fixtures, we've actually had more games afternoon fixtures last year than we've ever had before. And we want to keep building the momentum this year. I'm not going to lie to you, I found it particularly tricky with some year groups to get fixtures. Year 3's been very tricky, it's been quite testing to try and get hockey fixtures in particular. whereas year 5 and 6 I've been able to get more, and it just depends on other schools. So we work with other schools, we ask them what terms they do their sports, we try to match them up. We've also gone out to schools and we've contacted them all and asked them when their games afternoons are. So we know all the schools in the area to us that match up with the same games afternoon. So there's a lot of strategic work that goes on behind the scenes, and then we have to tweak it because we then find schools might have changed their curriculum the following year. So they've moved football from before Christmas to just before Easter, and we then have to start all over again. But the intention is, and very much is, building the future, having even more fixtures than we currently have. So we are working very, very hard to do that all the time in those major sports. Like I said, increased engagement with the borough. So we've got Key Stage 2 festivals that we are also going out to, and they can be competitive ones as well as what they call festival. So they're more participation based. I will touch on that more because that then drip feeds into selection. So how do we deal with selecting pupils for festivals in comparison to selecting pupils for competitions for IAPs, for those borough competitions that we have. And we're working to try and reduce clashes where possible. It's a busy school. The calendar is jam-packed. You as parents know that because you get all the communication, but we do try and work hard with music and the arts and all the co-curricular clubs that happen and all the things that happen during the day, and where we can attend events where it doesn't clash significantly with something else, we will. So we're always looking, and we're always looking at dates and putting more in. And then we're looking to develop these trips to sporting events. So last year, the netball team Leeds organised a netball trip to, I think it was Copperbox, where they got to watch some real high standard elite level netball, and I think it was a superb day for them, a long day, coached to Stratford and back, but they really enjoyed the experience to see what the top end looks like, and it's a real inspiration for them, and it gives them more motivation. Live sport at its best, you can't get any better than that, and all the emotions that come with it, and actually the physicality of it, and what these elite athletes can do with their bodies and how far they can push themselves, and the girls really seeing that in action. And then we've got the curriculum, so really making the curriculum inclusive to that idea of what we do in games afternoons and fixtures, and how we bring out the absolute best in them. And we also use the learning habits approach that is linked to the senior school. So how do we use the learning habits wheel when we plan our curriculum and our programmes of study? So I'm just going to touch a little bit on curriculum here for you. So the idea of what the learning journey might look like from reception to year 6. So ideally we want to give our pupils a knowledge, skills and understanding to prepare them for Key Stage 3 and beyond. So we mirror some of the sports in the senior school to expose them to those sports, and that journey starts from Key Stage 1 where there's an introduction into Key Stage 2 where we're then being very sport specific. So for example with Key Stage 1, a lot of it is heavily based on fundamental skills and movement. These are real building blocks for your children, so the idea of running, jumping, twisting, turning, hopping, sending and receiving, gym and dance, features heavily in that idea of coordination and inversion, and again there's an element of risk to gymnastics, so actually when they're younger you might find they haven't got as much fear as when they get to my age and look down a black slope when they're skiing and think, actually I'm not going to go down that way, I'm going to poodle down on the red, because actually as we get older you've got more going on in your mind with things that could go wrong, whereas children are very innocent and they will want to take that risk in a safe environment. And then we've got this idea of fun and enjoyment through creative storytelling lessons. I am blessed with a department that are so creative and can make Key Stage 1 lessons so exciting that I can hear the Key Stage 1 pupils bouncing down the corridor, and they actively tell me, Ms. Potte, I've got PE today, and they will bounce. Because all of these lessons are done through storytelling, and it's so subtle that girls don't realise that that's what's happening whilst the movement is happening, and they also link a lot of the curriculum around the school to the lesson. So, for example, I can't remember off the top of my head, but in year 1 they do My World, My Universe, and that theme is linked to physical space. And then in reception they do a theme of All About Me, and that's then incorporated into their PE lessons. So there is a cross-curricular link there. And then they do swimming in year 1, and what an adventure. You know, the first few weeks are interesting, but it's amazing how resilient they are, and actually how much progress they make from the time we have them in September to the end of year 1, and what we see and where they get to with that life skill. And again, it's done so creatively. And we have a beginner group that the staff take here, and that idea of teaching them water confidence and being really comfortable in water and wanting to be able to put their head underwater too. And then we go into Key Stage 2, where we really are encouraging the physical literacy side, saying, actually, we want you to have the responsibility to move. What does that look like? Is there an awareness of the health benefits that physical movement has long term, and what the impact of that is long term for them as they do get older? And then the knowledge, understanding and skills in the major sports that we do, and they do link to the senior school because it's a transitional period for us. They have the Super 8 over there, and then we actually cater for the netball, the cricket, the hockey, the athletics, the football, the skiing. There is an external skiing session that people can sign on to. So that transition is important to us because those that go into the senior school need to be exposed to those sports as well. And then this idea of competition experience, the winning and losing side, but also so much more than that. The idea of teamwork, the idea of leaning on each other. What does support look like when the chips are down? And tears. There are tears. And we had that yesterday. You know, losing, going so far, having the belief, and then actually losing again. That's the end of the journey. So it's important that they all experience that element of competition. And we start very basic, and then as they get older, they start to realise what that means. I think when they're younger, they don't always, but as they get older, the implications for them, they think a lot more about it, so we start to manage that. And then we have this game awareness that we do in Invasion Games. So the game awareness has been set up, so we teach the same themes through the sports, and we use the same language. So the pupils start to connect the language and understand the similarities and the differences between the sports. So we came up with this idea of concepts for attacking. So actually, when they're attacking in those invasion games, what should they be looking to do? And then actually, we can attack. We love that bit. That's exciting. But then we also have to do the boring bit when we lose the ball. We need to defend, which we're not so good at because we don't want to do that. So we then say, how do we actually defend? What does that look like? And we use the same language across the sports. So that connection of learning gets stronger. You'll see the poster on the PE notice board actually as well. And we're trying to keep using this language with the girls. So they come home to you saying, urgency, urgency. If they're not in trouble, nothing's happened. We've just told them to be more urgent and know what's happening on the pitch and react. We have had pupils go home and say that, and we've had parents say they came home just spewing out the word urgent and urgency, and they didn't know what it was in relation to until they explained. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about, I'm going to touch on the early specialisation debate. So I've spoken to many parents about this and their concerns about what should we do? Should we specialise early in one sport, throw all our eggs in one basket and send them down one path? Or do we let them explore a range of different sports? So much literature out there. There are so many podcasts out there. I've listened to a lot of them. And everyone says something different. So it comes down to personal opinion. My opinion is let them try everything. Let them try what they want to try. My evidence for that is right in front of you. So you've got Lauren, successful with a netball scholarship in the senior school. However, These are all the sports she did with us in the prep school. She did 18 for all of them. Okay, she juggled it, she managed it. And then we've got Eva. Yes, gym is probably her sport, but she also, again, represented at a high level in all the other sports. And then Isla, who I'm really pleased about, who bumped into me last week at 6:30 after getting off the buses. Miss Potte, I've got in the A squad. I'm training with the A squad. So although she didn't get a scholarship, she's in there and she's in the mix. But again, football, gymnastics, hockey. And then we've got Anais with her tennis scholarship. And again, she's not only just done tennis, but she was also playing netball with us. So what I would say to you is, let them explore. If they want to join an external club and you've got time for that, I know time, resources is difficult, juggling everything. If they come back to you and say, actually, I don't think that's my thing, take it from them, have the conversations with them, let them take the lead and let them discover what they might find is their real passion and motivation. And if you keep everything open, it's a good thing, because actually they start to specialise naturally as they get older. So when you get to Key Stage 3, I recommend when they go to senior school, they're going to be very excited. There are so many clubs on offer. I mean, there are 165 clubs on offer here, but when they go over there, there's probably the same amount, but they're different, and they get to sign up to all the sports clubs, and before you know it, they're going to come home and give you their timetable, and they're doing something every single night after school. There's a lot of them are sport related too. But I would say to Key Stage 3, say to them, 2 or 3 sports. If you don't like one, you can drop it, pick up another one. Because that's a sensible option. They've got a change in environment, bigger school, more homework, so that's manageable. And then I would say, actually, natural selection happens. They get to Key Stage 4 and 5, GCSEs, A-level come into play. Your daughters will naturally select the path that they want to take because they haven't got the time to do 2 to 3 sports. And they will say, well, actually, my route is going to be netball. I know I do hockey and football, but I really like my netball, so I'm going to continue to play club netball. I want to trial for regionals. That's the path I'm going to take. So I think, try not to specialise early, but then the other side of the coin is if they're a gymnast or they want to be the top tennis player in the country, and again, think about the percentages that make it to the very top and the hours spent on court. Okay, they really have to want to be in it. And the gym and the tennis is hours. The top performance pupils in this school train 20 plus hours every week, just in that one sport. If they get injured, and it's an injury that's going to impact them going forward, then that's game over essentially for them. You can have transfer of skills through different sports. We've had pupils going from being a tennis player to then never having picked up a hockey stick and then playing hockey and actually trialling for England 4 years later. So I would say to you, just keep the door open for your children, unless they really, you know they specifically, and their guidance to you is, I really want to do those early specialisation sports, which I don't always agree with, but those 2 sports will require them to start early, and that's just the harsh reality of the very top. So, selection. We've got 2 tiers here, probably 3 tiers actually. We've got these participation events and festivals that we attend, and they are participation. So the idea is we send a range of pupils, mixed abilities, those that don't normally always get the opportunity to go. And what we do is we do an expression of interest. So some of you might have seen our letters. We have a Key Stage 1 event. It's a participation event. If you would like your daughter to attend, please reply yes. And then we do a random ballot. So it selects them randomly and gives us who will go. That's the fairest way we can do it. Because we want to give everyone the opportunity, but a lot of these events have limited numbers. And what we're trying to do this year is to say, let's keep a list of who goes, and then if we've got a similar event for the same age group, if they get picked again, if a pupil that's already been to an event gets picked again randomly through this ballot that we do online, then we'll put them back in the hat and have another name come out, because actually we'd like to expose as many of our pupils as possible to these events and festivals. We've then got our competitive tournaments, our IAPs and our borough competitions. With these, there's a lot of work behind the scenes. We don't take it lightly. We actually talk a lot about each pupil when we are selecting for IAPs. And you know, those of you that are sitting there, when your daughter might be in year 6, and the highlight of their year is the netball IAPs, which is, you know, teed up to be the biggest. Independent Association for Prep Schools. So they have this, they run a number of sports, and at year 5 and 6 level we can enter those tournaments, and it sends you on to regionals or national finals or national qualifiers. And I think it has now been built up to be this big event and highlight, and actually it's quite a precious situation. And for year 5 and 6 or year 6, it's probably the biggest thing that happens for them if they're in contention for a squad place to compete and be really competitive and play that performance sport. So if they don't get selected, it does feel like the end of the world for them. It really does. It's the first part of their experience, but we have to keep telling them there's so much more to come, because when they leave us, there'll be more highs and more lows, there'll be more disappointments, there'll be more celebrations, because the journey is like this. It goes round in circles sometimes. It's just not a path upwards. It's not that straightforward. So we then have to manage those emotions and those conversations. And all I can say to you is as PE department, we talk all the time about the progress, especially with those performance teams, and actually who's doing really well and who do we then try out, who do we invite up. Someone that might not even be in that competitive A squad, actually she's in the B team at the moment, but we've seen her make so much progress. So we're going to invite her, she's going to come into that session. So the movement between groups is fluid, and then that lends itself to games afternoon fixtures. We do, or I made the decision personally to ability stream the pupils. So now when they come to games afternoon, we have 4 classes. Means there's smaller group sizes, anything from 10 to 14 pupils in each group, with a set teacher that has them every single week, so that we see them make a greater rate of progress, and we can actually then help them and support them further than having a mixed ability group, because sometimes we can have completely different spectrums and it's hard to manage all of that. And we found so far that it's working well. The girls are really focused. You can see the intent, they can see the purpose behind it. And then when we come to games afternoon fixtures, we then slot them into their, you might have seen their coloured teams, their mints, greens, silvers, whites, sage forest, we go on, depends how many teams we can get out against the opposition. And we have this process where we sit as a department and then we slot them into the teams, and where we've got to then make sure everyone's equal. Actually, so-and-so played really well last week, she needs to move up at least a team. Okay, well let's move her up. Actually, she might not have performed as well as we thought, she needs a bit more time in this team, so we then move them down. So it's a process that goes up and down, and it happens regularly, week in, week out. And that's the level of communication we go to when we talk about the games afternoon fixtures, as well as the competitive fixtures when we do IAPs. So what I would say to you is, if your daughter comes home and she feels really disappointed, we understand it, but just come and ask us the questions, and come and ask us, is there any more developmental feedback you could give? What can we do to get her to bounce back? Because all of this is part of the journey, and we're watching them the whole time, and we've got that personal approach with them where we see them every week, and we really are getting to know them and understand them better. And I thought I'd just share this with you, because up to the autumn term, the end of the autumn term, these are the events that we are attending, and they're the borough events. And what you'll see is where it says competition, it's competitive. We have to select strong individuals for those. And there are limited places, so how many participants we can have with that. And then where it says festival, that will be that ballot system that we use to make it really fair. I did have some feedback last year where a parent said it would be really nice to know that these are coming in advance. Completely agree. Totally on board with you about that. We don't always get this from the borough in a timely manner. It's out of my control. So what I will do is I will put this in a letter or in the parent email bulletin that you get so that you can see what it looks like. And when we get the spring term calendar of events, I will do the same. Because I know some parents are really keen, they might want to take them out if there's a football tournament coming up, give them some extra practice, but it's just again those lines of communication for us. This gives me an opportunity to tell you about some changes, and this will also go out in a letter to parents, year 5 and 6 specifically, about the changes we're introducing in terms of our communication. So the reason we're doing this is it's that idea of transition into the senior school. So the senior school use school sports. I don't know if anyone's familiar with school sports or they've seen the platform. Some people are nodding their head. But what we'll be doing is we won't be sending any online replies for games afternoon fixtures from next week for year 5 and 6 only. Because they're a little bit older and we feel like we can manage that responsibility, starting to give that sense of independence. With year 3 and 4 we're going to continue, so there is a transition period. So what will happen is you will get the games afternoon fixtures in a table format communicated through bi-weekly email. And then you'll have a link on there to click onto the team sheets. And then all you do is you click on the blue icon and you'll be able to put in the password and see what team your daughter's playing in, see whether they're home and away, there's a map to the venue, there's an address to the venue, all the details are there, the start time, the end time. So that we take away all these MIS letters and online replies that you're getting on a weekly basis when fixtures are really up and running, and actually some parents miss the deadlines because you've just got so much traffic coming through MIS with that communication. And then what we're expecting year 5 and 6 to do, which is what we're going to speak to them about by the end of this week and into next week, is actually communicate with parents and parents communicate with your child about there's a fixture coming, just letting you know that I'm picking you up from the venue, okay, so take your school bag with you. So we can then start to work with them that way to become a bit more independent. If they're being picked up from school, then they will know that and they leave their stuff here and they return to school. So we make a little register list with them as we do when we do co-curricular. We ask them, are you being picked up at the bus stop or are you being picked up back at school? And they can all tell us where they're being collected from, which is wonderful, even year 3 and 4. Most of the time. So, the school sports platform. I'm just going to quickly show you what that looks like. You will be sent the link, so you will click onto it. And this is what you'll see as parents. Okay? It's a wealth of information. If you click on the date, so for instance, if your daughter's in year 5, she had a fixture today on the 28th. Click on the 28th. And you'll see all these come up. Now they play hockey, so you just press on that and it drops down. You can see, all right, okay, there's 5 teams that are playing a fixture. Every single year 5, every single pupil in games afternoon plays in a fixture. They're all in a team. So then, actually I know that my daughter is playing, possibly plays in the mints or the greens, but there could be some movement. To check that, you just press on the blue icon and you'll see this window pop up. And then what you do is you put the team sheet password in there, and it's protected so that only you as parents can see it, nobody else. We have to do that. And then you can see, this is what I've written, you can see all the details I've put in. Okay? You can click on the map. If you don't know where Surbiton Hockey Club is, it will show you where it is, and it gives you the start and return time, the tea time, and you'll see when you put the password in, you'll see a list of all the pupils playing in that team. If you don't know what team your daughter's playing in, you can just open each one, find their name, and then you know all the details. So we're going to start with that to begin with. And this platform will be every Friday. So if your daughter has a fixture next week, by 5 p.m. on a Friday, the team sheet will be on there with all the details. We can't do it any further in advance because we have fluid movement between the teams. And actually what they do in their game session, or even if they've had a fixture this week, will inform our squads for the following week. And it's really important that the girls understand that, because if I put the team sheet up 2 weeks ago, I'm telling them that they're playing in that team and they're staying in that team. And that's not what we're about. We have the conversation again, and then we might rejig the teams depending on performance, and then we put them out by 5 o'clock on a Friday. So you can then see what's happening for the following week. So how can you support? Well, what we're asking for is your support when we have those really difficult selection decisions. And ask us the questions. It's easy to be really highly emotive, especially when your child is upset and they come home and they're really upset, and it's hard to manage those emotions for the first time. But if you could be really supportive from home and talk about this journey of sport and the idea that actually sport can be quite a tough place, but in physical education, there's room for everybody. There always is. And the idea of they're still included. They still play fixtures. They still get to play games afternoon fixtures. They still experience the win and loss. But actually, sometimes selection is harsh. And that, in essence, we have to make a decision. And if I could take all of them, I would. If I can only take a squad of 10 and I've got 15 pupils, I have to make a decision somewhere down the line. Kit and equipment. So they're getting into the rhythm now, having started school, but just checking in with them. Actually, you've got games tomorrow, or you've got PE tomorrow. Have you got your kit? Have you got your equipment? You've got hockey. Where's your gum shield? Where are your shin pads or your long socks? Because actually, when they get to school and they've forgotten something, they're very stressed. They don't want to upset us. They come and see us at the door and they say, I've forgotten my gum shield, I don't know what to do. And then they feel like they're missing out, because as soon as they don't have their gum shield, it's really unsafe for us. We can't have them being competitive because we have to think about safety. So just check in with them, make sure that they have what they need for their lesson. And then supporting this communication idea of using school sports for year 5 and 6. It is going to be a change. The next couple of weeks might be a little bit tricky, but we will have a letter coming out to you as well, just to explain what's happening, and a bit of guidance on school sports so you can have a play with the system yourself. We really ask you to build and develop expectations with your child. If we don't have any expectations of them, they won't have any expectations of themselves. And when they leave us, we want them to start to build that idea of independence and being responsible for themselves. And it starts early, so small expectations building to bigger ones, and that ripple effect. And actually, I think they quite like the expectation side of things, knowing what you want from them and the consistency of that. And then managing emotions. And I think this is managing emotions in terms of parents and pupils. So, if something happens at school and you get your daughter's account of it, I understand. The immediate response is to get on that keyboard and fire off that email. And I'd really ask you, and I'd really urge you, and I'd really appreciate the support if you just thought, actually, I'm going to wait 24 hours. As things start to boil down. And I suppose, as professionals, we give ourselves that too. That 24-hour time to reflect and think about the response. Because actually in 24 hours things might look very different. And what we do encourage you to do is just ask us the questions. You know, could you tell us what the conversation was, or what happened, or she's come home really upset? I don't know if you were aware of this, because we're here to work with you. That's all we want to do, and to work with your children. And we're passionate about it. So that's what I ask from all of you. If you can do that, that would be the dream. And just a little quote, because I like quotes. But we are one community. We work together. We are a big extended family. And that's really what I want to build over the next 3 to 5 years. Rome wasn't built in a day. Give us that 3 to 5 year strategy. We're building layers the whole time. And we just have the best interest, we have your daughter's best interest at heart. And what we're going to do is we're just going to finish with a short video just to celebrate what we've already done in year 1, and then hopefully what we're going to continue to do. This is just the start. Thanks very much for listening. This is where IT blips out on it.
You're a sky full of stars. I'm gonna give you my heart. 'Cause you're a sky full of stars. 'Cause you light up the park. I don't care, go on and tear me apart. I don't care if you do. 'Cause in the sky full of stars, I think I saw you. You're a sky full of stars. I wanna die in your arms. Oh. 'Cause you get lighter the more it gets dark. I'm gonna give you my heart. Oh. I don't care, go on and tear me apart. I don't care if you do. 'Cause in the sky full of stars, I think I see you. I think
Year 5 and 6 online applies, just to reiterate, it's only for games afternoon fixtures because they're in school. They get brought back to school before the end. So for anything outside their normal games afternoon, we will always send a letter. I didn't make that very clear, so just to let you know, but we will be sending a letter out just to clarify the procedure. And if you do have any questions, if you've got anything sport, like specific sport related that you want to speak to the team about, it's not just me, but they have, they're quite interesting people. Feel free to just chat with us before you leave, but thank you for coming tonight.